You need to start playing fighting games, like right now. Actually, you probably clicked on the video because you want to start. See, I'm 20 years old. I've lived through Prime Fortnite, Prime Call of Duty, all these other games, but nothing brought me more fun than playing fighting games. Okay, I'm kind of exaggerating a little bit on that, but for real guys, I really love fighting games. I've been wanting to make this video since I was like, how old am I now? I'm 20, since like 2 years ago, which I did make a video on Tekken, and that did not go well, okay? I'm not good at Tekken anymore. I'm not really good at any fighting games, unless it's Street Fighter or Marvel vs. Capcom. See, I've noticed a lot of people don't play fighting games anymore, and it sucks, because I love watching them. There's a lot of other YouTube videos that go way in depth on how tournaments and everything else is so immersive and amazing. Watching pros play Street Fighter is genuinely one of the best esports to watch. It is so fun. Over this past year, I actually watched EVO and it was pretty good, but over the past couple of years, I've noticed people just don't play these games that much anymore. And yes, when Street Fighter 6 came out, it was really big. It was an amazing game and I still play it to this day, but it really doesn't have the support that it used to have. The community is kind of divisive. It's just not really the same anymore. Because I still think one of the best Street Fighter games of all time is definitely Street Fighter 5. It was amazing. And I think Street Fighter 6 is just even better. And it just kind of seems like the community really didn't carry over from Street Fighter 5, which kind of sucks because these games are good. In this video, I'm going to talk about 4 franchises: Street Fighter, Marvel vs. Capcom, Tekken, and Dragon Ball. Now I know what you're thinking, Nick, why are we not talking about Mortal Kombat? It's shit. So let's start off with Marvel vs. Capcom. Now, Marvel vs. Capcom is single-handedly my favorite fighting franchise of all time. It has my favorite game ever, Ultimate Marvel vs. Capcom, definitely one of the best fighting games of all time. It's so good. Not even that, but if you guys notice, the music and the soundtrack that's in this game is perfect. Every single theme, even leading up to X-Men vs. Street Fighter, is still some of the best arcade music of all time. It is so good. It's so good, in fact, that I actually use it as my outro and my background music, mainly because I listen to this music while I do homework. And while we're on the topic of that, the best theme of all time is Captain America, so you're welcome. So Marvel vs. Capcom, like the original series, came out in the late 90s, and it still holds up. Like, most of the games are really good. Like, I can play the third one, even though it came out like 12 years ago, I still play it and I have just as fun as I did back when I was a kid. Also, I forgot to mention, I'm going to talk about each individual one and then I'm going to tell you which one you probably should play and how to play it based on your preference. So Marvel vs. Capcom is very interesting. It has pretty much a lot of Street Fighter characters and regular Capcom characters mixed with a big batch of Marvel characters. Now, I will say the games are somewhat balanced, and I think it actually works pretty well most of the time. There's a couple of characters later on as the games progress that get worse, and I will say I'm not really a big fan of Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite. It's just not my favorite game. I really do think that Marvel vs. Capcom 3 is probably the last good fighting game that we got from this series. I just don't really think the series is meant to be more modernized, which is where it's trying to head. I think the reason these games work so well is because they are played as an arcade button masher, and it's fun. You can be spacious with how you play, you can do all these other things, but you can also still get destroyed by people that have no clue on what they're doing. Alright, so let's talk about Street Fighter. If there's ever a fighting game series that you've heard about, it's either been Mortal Kombat or Street Fighter. Street Fighter is really good. Like, it's one of my favorite fighting games ever. I love the series, and I love how it gets progressively better, unlike Marvel vs. Capcom. I love Street Fighter 3, and it only got better as it went. Each character feels very balanced and has its own ups and downs, and it fits your playstyle depending on who you pick. And that's why I love this game. You can't just go around and button mash, you actually have to know combos. You actually have to play normally. You can't just run around and spam stuff. Now, of course, with the new modern controls, it can get annoying a little bit, but a lot of your classic Street Fighter players know how to play the game. It's not just running and spamming. You have to block, you have to create space, you have to know certain moves, you have to know when to activate those certain moves, you have to know how to play the game correctly, or you're going to lose and get mad and probably not touch the game. I mean, the first Street Fighter game that ever came out was 37 years ago. That is just nuts to me. So now we have to talk about possibly the two worst fighting games, in my opinion, and that is Tekken. Now, I don't like Tekken for a lot of reasons personally, but I can see why other people like it. It is fun to watch, I will say that. It is very interesting, and it's cool to see people that know what they're doing and play the game at like a professional level. That's cool. I like seeing that. It is so hard to adapt to that game. I know other people like it, okay? I have a couple of friends that think it's better than Street Fighter. I mean, they're wrong, but it's fine. We can let them live in their own world, okay? I'll go in depth a little more when I talk about how you should play these games in a minute, so don't worry about it. So now let's talk about Dragon Ball Z, okay? The whole game series. Personally, I'm not a big fan of it. It's not really fun to me, and I don't really like the whole 3D aspect of Tekken or this game. I think it's pretty stupid. I don't really like it. But I'm also not a huge Dragon Ball Z fan. I used to love it, okay, but I kind of got bored of it, and I don't really like playing the game. Even the new one, sure, it's a little fun, but it gets pretty repetitive, and I don't really care for it as much. And I mean, it's Dragon Ball. That's all you really need to know. So now you're probably wondering, well, Nick, you told me about these 4 franchises. Which one should I play? Well, I'm glad you asked. So, let's start from the top, and let's talk about Marvel vs. Capcom. So, if you're going to try and play Marvel vs. Capcom, first off, you need to know that, of course, it is a button-mashing game to a certain extent. People can just spam a bunch of combos, and they can beat you. But you can get around it, okay? It's not completely impossible. You can destroy a bunch of trash players. Like, it's possible. You just gotta know who you're maining and who your 3 characters, or 2 or 3 characters are. That's really it when it comes to that. Also, you may be thinking, well, which game do I play? There's a lot. And honestly, that's probably up to you. X-Men vs. Street Fighter was one of the first games that I played. I liked it, but of course it is very hard to play. And if you're trying to play something that's more updated and modern, then I would probably go with Ultimate Marvel vs. Capcom 3. Possibly one of the best fighting games of all time, and I love it, so I would probably start out with that. Plus, most of these games are on sale, so you can get them for a pretty cheap price. You could also go with Marvel vs. Capcom, the Fighting Collection. It has like all the arcade classics, including like X-Men vs. Street Fighter, Marvel Superheroes vs. Street Fighter, which is amazing, by the way. It has one of the best soundtracks of all time. So I'd say it's worth it if you're wanting to try out some of the classics. Now, we'll say, in terms of roster and who you like in your games, I still think Ultimate Marvel vs. Capcom has some of the best characters in there. It has all of the ones that I personally would want and who I would want to use, so take that into consideration. So, if you're a Marvel or a Capcom nerd and you want to play a fighting game, there you go. This is the full franchise for you. If you like that, I would also try Street Fighter. Speaking of Street Fighter, let's talk about it. If you're someone that likes to rank up, you like a couple of characters and you just want to use those, and you want to go around and punch people and learn this entire character and get really good, then this game is for you. I still think Street Fighter 6 is one of the best Street Fighter games. I mean, of course, next to Street Fighter 5, those are my 2 favorites. So I would try one of those 2 games. They really have pretty much the same characters, and they look really good. I mean, the quality really isn't crazy different. I will say Street Fighter 6 obviously has better graphics, but a lot of it moves and feels somewhat samey, but it feels really good either way. Now, of course, while playing Street Fighter, you also want to talk about a fighting stick, and I know that a lot of other people won't really talk about it in their videos, and I'll kind of give you my personal opinion on them. So I know they implemented Modern in Street Fighter 6, and I did start out using it a little bit just to kind of see and feel how it, works. And I will say it is kind of overpowered if you know how to use it, but if you're a classic player, you can definitely get around it. There's a lot of moves and combos that you can't do on Modern, and even like with something like a fighting stick, it's still somewhat overpowered with Modern, but not like crazy. I would say it's pretty balanced in that direction, and the way that they implemented the new Modern setting is to, of course, attract newer people and make it a little easier instead of having to sit down and learn alternate character for like a week, so it's not really an awful setting. So if you're new to Street Fighter, you could try the new modern setting. And of course, don't buy a fighting stick unless you want to play the game and kind of look a little fashionable. That's really it. I mean, I will say there is a couple times where it does feel better, but it's not really like a huge competitive advantage. So, you know, I mean, Punk won with a PS5 controller. You can really use whatever. So, like I said, if you like any of that, play Street Fighter. Alright, so I don't really have a whole lot of stuff to say about Tekken. If you guys like 3D fighting and you like stuff that looks really cool, then I'd probably play Tekken. It is really hard though, and I'll talk about Dragon Ball too because they kind of correlate. It's very hard to play the game, and I will say the tournaments are really cool. It is a really hard game to play in my opinion, and I just don't really care for it that much. But if you like 3D fighting and you want to try something a little new, play Tekken. Try it. I mean, what's the worst that could happen? Alright, so finally, we're getting to the end. Dragon Ball Z. So if you like Dragon Ball Z, then you're probably gonna like these games. Well, at least like somewhat. I only ever played these games because I was watching the show and I enjoyed the show. For me, it's not really a fun game, especially Sparking Zero. I did play it. I raged and got off stream like 20 minutes in. I'm not here to like trash on both of these games because obviously they have a bigger fan base than like most of the games that I play. I'm not gonna sit here and hate on it. Marvel vs. Capcom is not gonna have another game out for like a couple of years, so I'm kind of screwed. I have to play what I can get, and I did play this game. I might play it again eventually, but personally it's just not my favorite. But if you want to have fun, go play it, or you might not have fun, I don't know. So yeah, you need to play some fighting games, okay? We need more people playing the game, and we need more support, okay? I'm kind of tired of getting a game like every like 10 years. It's pretty annoying. I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.